Hey everybody, it's Stove Talk with Matt. Welcome back to another episode of This Stove Explained. Here, a Russian stove maker is constructing what he's calling an Igor Kuznetsov furnace, a Russian stove that will be a hearth stove, not a grate stove. It'll be a double bell, and the gases will pass off to the left, down, gases will pass off to the left under the firebox, and then up this channel. The reason I wanted to show, well, there's three reasons I wanted to do this as part of This Stove Explained. One, it's in a foreign language, like most of them are. It's hard to determine what's going on, and sometimes the Google translates not always very good. Secondly, he doesn't show you much of the construction. He doesn't show you much at all unless you really know what you're looking at. And lastly, it does have a really good shot or brief video of the upper bell. You know, we look at all this computer design stuff and animation, but this is a really good example of what a simple upper bell in a two-bell stove is supposed to do, and that's the reason I'm doing this. So before we jump ahead, again, obviously he puts in a glass door. Wood is loaded in here. It's on fire brick. It's not on a grate. 95% of these stoves, the air comes in the air door and it comes up through the grate. It's very similar to a coal stove. They're only meant to be burned twice a day, and then when they're not burning, roughly 16 hours a day, they're not burning, they're radiating out the heat from being burned twice a day. So just before I jump ahead, this is the firebox here, of course. Most of these Russian stoves, it's a very tall firebox. Sometimes it's like this one's going up into a bread oven. When you have a tall firebox, it gives the opportunity for all the smoke and all the particulates to be burned up. They are very low or no smoke when you have a tall firebox because the flames can lap up and kind of like eat up the smoke. So here there's two partitions or two walls on either side of the firebox, and then this would be a channel down, and then this would be a channel up. So the bread oven will be up here. I'll skip ahead in a second, but I want to show you this thing called the dry slit. The gases in the flame will go through the bread oven, be pulled to our left. They will go down. This whole thing here will be a channel. So this again, walls on either side of the firebox, and then up this channel into the second bell. I want to show you this thing called the dry seam or dry slit. He doesn't. There's a just for a second we get a good picture. I'm sorry, a good image of it, guys. Sorry for jumping around and just doing this on the fly. This is very hard to do on the fly. I don't know. There we go. I don't know this exact video inside and out, but this is exactly where we want to be. So this is indicative of a Kuznetsov Russian stove. There's this slit on one side or the other called a dry seam or dry slit. And wherever you see this slit in the firebox wall, you know that's the direction the gases, or that's the channel that the gases will eventually find their way into. Now, we'll have a discussion some other time where this dry seam is supposed to allow cooler gases to escape the stove more quickly. I don't buy any of that, but that's, Matt, you know more than the Russian stove makers. No, but I don't buy that these stoves magically collect up cold gases and allow the cold gases to escape and they just magically separate. I don't buy it, but we'll talk about it some other time. It does assist with draft and the direction of draft, even though there's a good use of a damper to heat everything up in this stove, which I'll show you. It's just there's no downside really in putting it in. So even though there's this giant, by the way, the Kuznetsov dry seam is only 3 centimeters wide and it's a lot smaller. He has this gigantic slit. But even so, 90% or 95% of the heat and flames are going to lap up. It will draw some through the slit into the down channel, which will help draft. But you know, if some of you might know what I'm talking about, this dry seam. Do the cold gases just magically find their way in here? No, but we'll talk about it some other time. Whenever you see a slit, you know that's going to be the down channel or the first channel that the gases are going to pass into. So if you're not following me, I'll explain this later. That's a gigantic dry seam or dry slit. Kuznetsov doesn't design them like that. So he's saying construction of a Kuznetsov furnace. Kuznetsov doesn't have this furnace on stove.ru. He's just calling it that because he's putting in a dry slit which he assigns to Kuznetsov's design, and it's a double bell. Anyway, sorry, you don't need all that detail. All right, let me fast forward, walking the mile. Okay, I did show you. This is a grate stove. Let me go back. This is a hearth stove, not a grate stove. And you're just throwing the wood once the glass door is opened here on fire brick. Again, in the front, he must have some sort of rectangular slit that the air will come up and wash the glass and come up into the front of the firebox through a rectangular slit here that we can't see. Again, most 98% of these stoves are grate stoves. They go up to full temperature, 1200, 1500 degrees very, very quickly, and then they burn out very, very quickly. But then all the heat is retained in the brick. The purpose, to me, a hearth stove like this produces much more smoke. The main purpose of a hearth stove is when you go to open it back up 4 or 5, 6 hours later, you have coals and you can start a fire again without relighting. Grate stoves go out and they have to continuously be relit. We'll do a whole video sometime, hearth versus grate for these type of stoves. Just know for 200 years in Russia, they use a grate. They don't use a hearth, but he's using a hearth, but who knows why. Okay, skipping around. Okay, he's jumped here a day or two ahead in his construction. This is what we were just looking at here. He's got the bread oven above it, and the bread oven is designed where the flames actually lap up into there's a big slit here. The flames lap right up into the bread oven, and then they're going to be drawn right up here. They're going to be drawn off to the left, our left, down this outside channel. In this stove, which is a unique design, they're going to go under the firebox and then up the side channel into this upper bell. Again, there's some really good pictures of the upper bell coming up in just a minute to show you. What did I want to mention about that? It is rare for these stoves to pull the gases under the firebox, but it is done. It's done a lot. I mean, it's rare, but it's not like it's such a hard thing to do. I've seen it in designs 5 or 10 different times. Even the temp cast pre-assembled masonry heaters in North America, or the U.S. prefabs called temp cast, which is a good little prefab stove. Seems like a good little company. They sometimes pass gases. That doesn't sound too good. They pass gases in flame under the firebox. Now, if you're going to pull, I got to stop saying pass gases. If you're going to pull your hot gases down under the firebox before you go up, you better make sure everything's heated up and your chimney is heated up, or you will smoke your house out. Gases in flame don't want to go that low and under. I don't really love that design. Most of these stoves, and even in Kuznetsov's plans like the OIC or OIK4, they will come through the bread chamber, they'll go down the side in a smaller channel and then go right back up along the same line and down and then right back up. Kind of there's this a split in the side channels. They won't go as low as underneath, but again, it's not completely impossible to do, of course. This guy knows what he's doing. But he does use the damper correctly to heat everything up. You better make sure everything is hot, or the gases are not going to want to go that low. That's a big risk if your chimney's not correct. Also, these stoves many times are built first before the house, just like here. The stove should be smack in the middle of the house, not on a wall or an outside wall or anything like that. The way they're built properly, they're built smack in the middle of the house, and sometimes they go up into the second floor, and the house is built around it, and you don't need any other heat if it's built like that. So let's continue jumping around, walking the mile. Okay, this is where it shows you good pictures of the upper bell. Let me try to get. Okay, remember the gases were pulled from that last image, pulled down on the left underneath, and then here's where they come up on the right, past into the second bell. Don't worry about this wall here. Well, it has a few a few purposes. Let me. This isn't the greatest picture to talk about what the purpose of the. This is better here. Okay, the chimney to get out, the chimney to exit the stove and to get out through the roof will be just above where my arrow is here. The purpose of the upper bell is to basically block off the chimney or hide the chimney for a second or a second and a half from the hot gases. So this is very common design, but there's hundreds of different ways you can do this. The gases come up a very large channel on the right into the second box or second bell. It's a box on top of a box. Then because they're hot, of course, they want to rise to the top. There will eventually just be a ceiling. This row of bricks here will hold the ceiling of bricks, and this will hold the ceiling of bricks. So the hot gases will kind of collect up here. And the only way they can find the chimney is eventually to drop down low to get through this. I'm going to back up 5 seconds, see if that's a better shot. That's where they come up on the right. There. They have to eventually drop down low to get into this back chamber where then they are allowed access to the chimney. Now, I'm not sure how this is coming out, so I'll explain it one more time. A successful upper bell simply blocks the hot. See, if all these walls and stuff weren't here, the hot gases would come up here, and then they would just go. They would have a mind of their own. Just immediately would zoom out the chimney, and all these bricks wouldn't get hot. They wouldn't. The hot gases. The idea behind these stoves is for the hot gases to touch every single brick as equally as possible, so they all heat up together. It would just go right out. So you trap the gases, but not so much so where your system backs up and it smokes your house out. It's kind of like it's an art as much as a science. So there's like a wall across here with these bricks, and the wall primarily is actually to be able to eventually put a ceiling across here, a ceiling of bricks, but it also blocks the gases from immediately finding this way out. So they collect up here, and then people have these big conversations about stratification, which I think people take this whole idea too far too. Like there's going to be this perfect stratification. All the hot gases will magically stay up top, and all the cool. It's true to a degree, but we'll talk about it some other time. Eventually, the gases that are a little bit cooler will make their way low, go through this opening up here, and then out through the chimney. Oh, there must be a picture of that coming up. The idea is to keep the hot gases stuck at kind of along the top of the ceiling of the bell as long as possible. So I don't know how that came out, but I'm not going to re-record. This is, there you go. Let me go back 5 seconds. There's the chimney there. And maybe I should have been on this image all along. Gases come up the channels in this stove are very, very large for the descending channel and the rising channel. And so they're going to be so hot coming up here, they're going to collect up here, maybe for a few seconds before they find their way through this slit and then down, and they'll collect here as well. Again, there's going to be a big, huge brick ceiling across all of this. This is a bar for the damper. Hopefully, we'll look at that in a minute. And then as they get a little bit cooler, they will go through this little door into this chamber, and then out. The chimney here is out through the back to find its way out of the house. And the idea behind all these stoves is for the hot gases to touch all the bricks equally and for as long as possible. But this magical stratification, all the hot gases just magically stay high, and I don't buy it. But we'll talk about it some other time. Okay, let's continue. See, there's it's thin, but it is a big ascending channel, which, he's calling this a Kuznetsov stove just because it's not from Kuznetsov's plans. But I'm sure this works just fine. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing, of course. I don't want anybody to get confused with someone say, well, what's this Okay, I can see, here's going to be the ceiling, and what's this for? This wall here, and then the gases have to pass back here, and mostly this wall here is just to hold the ceiling up. It's not needed in the design of what the stove is out to do. This wall is just to hold the ceiling up. They try to use as few of angle irons or lintels as possible to bridge for the ceiling. A lot of they'd rather stack bricks to hold the ceiling, because every time you stack bricks, it's another brick that's going to heat up. It's better to have 1,000 bricks in your stove than 900, because you have another 100 heaters. Each little brick has to be seen as its own heater. That will, because they're all collectively working together, dissipate its heat over 6, 8, or 10 hours. And there's the little, just that, that little, that is very common. A 1/2 brick wide by 3 bricks tall exit into the final chamber. This is, 101 class on what an upper bell should do, and it's very simple, very simple. Always have just block the chimney with your bricks, and have the gases have to dip down low to get out. And that holds more heat in the upper bell. And I've seen it as small as 2 bricks to get out, but I like what this guy's doing. No reason to screw around. It's better to find you lose a little heat, you lose a little efficiency. Better to let it out a little bit more quickly than to take the risk of backing your house, blowing your house up with smoke and backup and things like that. It's not worth being too perfect. And there's this damper. We'll just skip ahead. I guess here it comes. Okay, this is a great example of how the damper should be used. Here, his damper's in the closed position when the stove is fully hot and everything's heated up and all the gases are flowing through all the chambers properly. So remember, the flames come through that bread oven and go off to the left. When that damper is closed, it blocks access to the final chimney. There's the chimney right here. So the gases have nowhere to go but to be forced down, remember, under that left channel, under the firebox, and then up the other side. When he first starts the stove, depending on how much he needs to heat everything up, for 10 or 15 minutes, he will open the damper. This is some of the main reasons I want to show you this. So he's just lighting the stove. Damper is in the open position here. The gases will flow up through the bread chamber, and then this is the bread chamber is just below, where these bricks here, where my cursor is. The gases and flames will come up through the bread chamber, slide left, and go right up through this hole, and then there's the chimney, right out the chimney. So that will heat up part of the stove, but most importantly, let's just say, whoever builds these stoves, nobody ever talks about the importance of the chimney, which is like 80% importance or 70 to 80% importance to the entire system. Once that, hopefully, has got another 15 feet of chimney that goes up through the center of the house, stays insulated, stays hot. Once that extra 15 feet of chimney here, it's going to go off horizontal for a foot, and then it's going to go up. Once that gets piping hot, then he closes the damper, and this chimney is still pulling so hard, the gases will very easily be forced down, underneath, and up the other side into this top bell. A hot chimney will pull, a hot, good insulated chimney will pull anything through. So without this, this stove has no chance of working unless you have another way to get into your chimney to heat it up. A little door on the back or something where you heat your chimney in another way with little paper fires, or that's even not good enough for a stove like this. I mean, it should probably be, burned with the damper open to heat up the chimney for 10 minutes or so before closing the damper. Although I've seen similar stoves where you just need a little bit of warmth. They burn it for just a minute and a half, and then they close the damper and it works just fine, just to get the momentum going, just to get that ice cold out of the chimney. Maybe 10 minutes is probably too much. And then, of course, as you get to know your system, you know how long you have to preheat your chimney. Somebody may be asking, why is there like a cut here in the damper? It's for safety. Most of the Russians don't do this. It's for safety, for carbon monoxide and things like that. The idea is the second time you burn it, say you burn the stove 8 o'clock at night through 10 o'clock, and you go to bed at 10 o'clock. And it's, again, in Russia, wherever, it's negative 30 degrees outside. What they do is, it's just, you open up the stove or you look in through your glass door, it's just coals, just embers, no flame, no smoke, just embers. They'll close off, and maybe this is, I'm not an expert at this, so you have to be very careful. They'll close off the damper, and most Russians don't have a little safety slit. Close off the damper. So again, the heat from the coals in the firebox sitting on the hearth or the grate, that heat then cannot escape the stove and get outside the house. So there's more heat that radiates out of the stove, but there's also another purpose that's equally as important to balance it out on the other side. It blocks cold air, ice cold air, negative 30 degrees from coming down the chimney once the stove goes cold, and blocks it here, so it can't, ice cold air can't get into all these bricks and make everything ice cold in the morning, so you lose your draft. You have to keep everything warm. Burning it, they burn it twice a day for like 4 months straight with no days off. So this is for safety. Most Russians don't do this. They close the damper fully because they know, okay, I just have a few coals left. My carbon monoxide risk is very low, almost zero. I want the heat to stay in the stove, and I want the ice cold air from outside to not be able to get back in the stove. He has this slit here because if you say he closes it too soon and there's some carbon monoxide, he'll still be able to escape through this little hole, much, much safer, but also lets some cold air down as well. He's just saying it's a compromise. Most Russians, again, that live in places that go down to negative 40 degrees do not do this. They just close the damper at the right time. But there's these stories I've seen where people, barely made it out of the house alive because the damn carbon monoxide was so thick because somebody closed the damper off, got too casual about it, and closed the damper off too soon. This is also the reason when you buy a circular damper for a 6-inch stovepipe in the U.S., they never seal exactly. They have slits and cuts, all government regs, because the government doesn't trust you to be. It's big. It's babysitting. It's nanny state. They don't trust people. The government needs to look out for you. So you can't get a damper in North America that doesn't have a bunch of cuts and slits in it. We almost done here. Let's see. Well, hold on a second. Yeah, that's not a solid wall. That what's holding that up. That's not a solid. It's just bricks to hold up the ceiling. So as this seems to be open here. This would probably be a clean out door. We saw the thin channel where the gases come up the right side. Gases are going to come up. The gases that come up the right side and the back are going to get stuck back here, at least maybe for a half a second, or collect a little bit here before they find their way out. And then you have gases also coming up in the front that won't bother to go back here. They'll just dive right across the front, but they'll have to dip down, remember, to get out. Here's they have to dip down low there to get out. And just another clean out door when you see that. And that's just showing you the width of this. That's a really wide channel. I mean, most channels in these Kuznetsov stoves are much narrower. Okay, I guess that's about it. And he uses he has another. Does he have another? He's put in another dry slit across the back of the upper bell, which I don't know. It's not I know you're not going to follow what this is or what. Am I going to go back and show you? Yeah, okay. Go back and show you. Okay. Back here, he's put in another dry seam or slit. so gases can find their way, instead of having to go around the front, and some gases can find their way directly into this back chamber. I've never seen anybody use a dry slit for the top bell. And if he's using that damper to preheat his chimney, I don't know why that would be necessary. But I don't know. I kind of like what this guy's doing. It's better to make sure everything works and give up a little efficiency than to play it too close. So anyway, sorry for those. You don't need that level of detail. Go forward. There's the dry seam on the back upper bell. Never seen that ever. No, it's not in any Kuznetsov plans. So that's a clean out door there that's open. That's interesting. It's just a different gases come up here on this side, and then there's the little door they have to dip under and eventually work their way up into that chimney to get out. And that's the final stove. And he does take he lights it up here. I don't think he really rages it up because I don't think you're supposed to rage it up until the thing's dry. The thing's still wet. He does top down lighting. And skip ahead a little bit here. I think he says somewhere in the translation it's still wet. I guess he does rage it up a bit. I know other videos say don't make little fires until it's it's dry. And okay, so his bread oven is up to 300. In this case, some people will put in a bread oven where the flames pass around it. They don't go through it. For some people, that doesn't heat up properly. It's probably better the way he's done it, to have the flames go through the bread oven to get out. Then you can't cook anything, of course, when you cook on it is when you have coals beneath it and there's no more flames lapping up. Then you can put your stuff in your bread, and the coals from underneath and the heat that those bricks have gathered up, staying above 300, should be enough to cook bread and other things like that. You have to wait till your fire completely calms down for this type of bread oven design. Yeah, see, just when you light the fire there, he probably has a channel in the back too, for the and I don't know. Usually they have a channel in the back for the flames to lap up into the bread oven, and they're in the middle. But you can't. He would say you can't cook anything like that. You're not meant to. You wait till everything dies down, and then you got your coals, especially on a hearth oven. Maybe that's why he picked a hearth instead of a grate, because those coals are going to provide that heat into the bread oven for an additional hour to an hour and a half over what you would get from a grate that burns everything out very quickly. Again, flames up through the bread oven, pulled left down the channel, underneath the firebox, up our right into the second bell. And then he does take the FLIR camera out. See, that's what you get from a hearth. You get these coals that can last, for those of you that have wood stoves. Coals can last overnight if you have a big ash bed. A grate, you just have to relight every time. You just can't. My wood stove now is a grate stove. It's the one thing I can't stand about it, is there's no chance to have coals in the morning. Zero. If you even forget for an hour and a half and you have nothing left. I've been up here and I'm like, oh, great, I have my stove burning. You go down, there's just nothing, just by forgetting for an hour. Okay, skipping ahead. Let me get the FLIR. See, that's when you put your bread in, when there's no flames, but you still have the warmth of everything. And yeah, just like that. Just like that. That's when you put your bread in, exactly like that. Everything's all burned out. And that's kind of when you'd close the damper up too for the night. All right, where's I'm going to use this other thing to skip ahead even more. Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to show you this part, guys, is see, it's in Celsius, of course, but the bricks, each individual brick, it doesn't get that hot, but this is normal. Along the side there, some of the bricks, that's not very hot at all. but he only burnt one little fire. I guess it was the first fire. The firebox is still extremely hot. But usually, when they do these FLIR cameras on these Russian stoves, the bricks are like at 60 degrees or so on average Celsius, which what is that, like 140? 60 to 70, 140, 160 degrees. They don't get hotter than that. You almost can, a Russian stove you can touch with your hand. It's just the sheer number of bricks that heat up. If you have 1,000 bricks, you have 1,000 heaters. And collectively, it puts out a tremendous amount of heat for the house, even though any one area isn't very hot. If you go to build one of these, and you're like, this is terrible. This isn't, you have to have enough mass. Any one section. And again, that's the firebox. Of course, that's going to be super hot. So what isn't he? Let me fast forward. Get off the firebox, dude. See? That's not hot at all because he's just done one little fire. But any one section's not going to be that hot. You just have to have enough bricks to where you get a tremendous amount of radiant heat because everything's just at 120 to 160 or so. So you have to have enough mass. I have a smaller masonry heater on this channel that's just simple design, smokeless, but you'd have to burn that hours and hours longer because it doesn't have the mass to hold the heat like these monsters do. That only need to be burned twice a day. All right, guys, I guess that's it. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon.